Make up mind. Fight.
One valid criticism that the Mario series tends to receive pretty regularly is the relative safety that it takes with its playable characters. Not really in the mainline platformers where sales and brand image are at their most important, but more in side games and spin-offs. I mean, just think about how many games we've all played that feature the same 8 to 12 characters on loop. It can get pretty stale. That said, it's not like the Mario series never steps out of its comfort zone with its playable characters. In fact, the harder you look and the more you think, there have been some pretty wacky selections made by Nintendo over the years, be it for their context relative to other characters, obscureness, or just their place in the series these days. Let's discuss what I believe to be the weirdest playable characters in the Mario series. One thing to note is that I'm consciously excluding mobile games from this list, since their gacha-type gameplay means that Nintendo generally has to reach a lot more to find potential playable characters. Sorry to all those Dr. Goomba Tower fans. Other than that,
Let's go!
let's start off with the least weird character on this list, despite them still being pretty puzzling, all things considered. Super Mario Kart on the SNES was obviously a massively important title in the Mario series. It laid the groundwork for non-platforming games starring the Mario cast. It began what would go on to be one of the most successful game series of all time, let alone spin-offs, and it was the first time we really got to see an ensemble cast of Mario characters just hanging out together. This cast was pretty bog standard for the time, and even today, with series regulars like Mario, Luigi, Bowser, Peach, and the like filling out the roster. Seems pretty normal, but then there's Junior. This game came out in 1992, and there wasn't much in the ways of an established cast for a Mario spin-off game yet, and 2 whole years before the iconic Donkey Kong design we know today came to be in Rare's Donkey Kong Country. Because of this, we got Donkey Kong Jr. as the final playable character in Super Mario Kart. Now, this isn't too weird at first, but the more you think about it, the more questions it raises. Why DK Jr. over regular DK? Why a character from a non-Mario series instead of a core Mario character or enemy? Just how did Jr. get a driver's license? Most of these questions still don't have answers either today, which makes it all the more mysterious. Sure, the Donkey Kong we know today, who I guess is DK Jr., it's confusing, wouldn't come around for another 2 years, and Diddy Kong didn't exist at all at this point yet, but it's just kind of a puzzling inclusion, even more so when you realize how little of a footprint DK Jr. left on the series. Every other playable character in the OG Mario Kart would go on to be celebrated series regulars, but this would be Jr.'s only role in the series until his nostalgia bait inclusion in Mario Kart Tour almost 30 years later. He would go on to only appear in Mario Tennis as a playable character after this, and would make a few sparse cameo appearances before being effectively cut from the Mario series altogether. Just why wasn't Jr. built to last? Well, I'd say the blame squarely lies on Diddy Kong. Diddy was, after all, originally intended as a redesign for Jr., but Nintendo mandated that he be made into a new character due to how vastly different his design was. After this, Diddy took pretty much every single role DK Jr. could have possibly asked for. Diddy was cool, sleek, he had that 90s attitude and edge, whereas DK Jr. was a monkey in a onesie. The choice on who to move forward with was clear. All things considered, Jr.'s inclusion in Super Mario Kart made some degree of sense at the time, considering the environment of playable Mario characters, but as time's gone on, it becomes more and more perplexing. I think that he was included because of his degree in mathematics, personally. As time has gone on, the Mario Kart series has become no stranger to crossovers with other Nintendo games. Between Link, Inkling, and the Animal Crossing characters in Mario Kart 8, and things like those old Pac-Man arcade machines, Nintendo seems to view Mario Kart as a fitting place for Mario to rub tires as some of gaming's other iconic characters. For the most part, I'd say that these inclusions have made sense. All of these characters are popular and iconic in their own rights, and having them appear in Mario Kart acts as a nice bit of fan service for dedicated Nintendo fans. What we have to remember, though, is that the groundwork for crossovers in Mario Kart was not laid by Link or Isabelle, but by a humble plastic robot all the way back in 2005. Rob's appearance in Mario Kart DS is absolutely stellar, and something that I feel the game would objectively be way worse without, but man, was it weird, especially for the time. Rob is obviously an important part of both Nintendo and general gaming history, with his role as a toy peripheral available with the NES arguably being a massive factor in that console's success and the revival of video games in the 80s. It makes sense that Nintendo would want to pay tribute to him in some way, but making him a playable character in Mario Kart in 2005 was quite the way to do it. Keep in mind, this was 3 years before Rob was fully introduced to the general gaming public in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and in 2005, I don't think many core Nintendo fans were really knowledgeable about the company's history in the way they are today. Rob's history is common knowledge today, but for a kid in 2005, they probably had no idea who this robot was. Regardless, Rob's inclusion in Mario Kart DS is still one of the most pleasant surprises in the series' history, and stands as one of the earliest official instances of Nintendo celebrating their own history in the way that they love to today. Plus, this is the first time at all that a non-Mario character was ever playable in Mario Kart. At this point, Rob wasn't viewed as a character, but rather an interesting footnote in Nintendo history, so I don't think anyone expected this. It makes it all the sadder that he's never reappeared in the Mario Kart series, not even in Tour. Come on, you give him this starring role and then pull the rug out from under him? Well, regardless, it was still fun at the time, and at least Rob can rest easy and terrify Smash Ultimate these days. Moving on from Mario Kart, let's spend a little bit of time on the Mario Party series. Mario Party as a whole probably plays it the safest with its character choices out of any Mario spin-off, with the classic crew of plumbers, princesses, Koopas, and animals often being all that's on offer. When the series gets weird, it's typically only to include some random enemies or the off-toad.
Daring today, aren't we?
That said, why is PomPom in Super Mario Party? The Mario series tends to do this thing where it'll introduce a new character in a main series game and then feature them all over spin-offs for a while. Think Rosalina, Pauline, and Nabbit, but I've never felt like PomPom of all characters was popular or influential enough to be one of these characters. She technically made her playable debut in Mario Sports Superstars, but I'm hesitant to count that as she primarily appears as just a standard court player alongside other Mario enemies rather than a fully playable new character. In Super Mario Party, however, she was lifted up to full unlockable playable character status, which just makes no sense. What's weird is that PomPom is playable, but Boom Boom, the original character that she's derived from and tags along with, isn't. It's especially odd considering that on the inverse side of things, Boom Boom was playable in Mario Tennis Aces without PomPom. It's like they decided to split the duties between themselves like a couple working different shifts at the same job. It'd be like if Disney made a party game with a playable Daisy Duck but not a playable Donald. It just makes the roster of both games come off as unbalanced through these characters' inclusions. Plus, I don't think PomPom is that popular. Like, the Mario series has loads of characters, enemies, bosses, and mini-bosses for them to pull from for playable characters, and Odyssey alone introduced or reintroduced a ton of them. Was anyone really clamoring to play as a nondescript mini-boss from the 3DS era? Personally, I would have much rather seen Pauline in Super Mario Party over PomPom if they really needed a new playable lady, and if the current standing of the Mario series is anything to go by, I'm not the only one who felt that way. Back to Mario Kart for a bit, let's take a quick look at Mario Kart 7. This was a very important game for Nintendo at the time, as it, alongside a price drop, really helped kick the 3DS into gear and allow it to carry Nintendo throughout the Wii U era. With Nintendo as a whole pretty much riding on this game's success, it stands to reason that they would want to play it as safe as possible for the game's roster. And then they put in Honey Queen. Mario Kart 7 features a few other weird character choices between Wiggler and Lakitu, but none stand out as much as Honey Queen. This was just an odd decision all around. Honey Queen was nothing more than a barely encountered NPC in Mario Galaxy before this, and despite being very visible in that game's marketing, wasn't even that big a part of the game. So the decision to make her playable in a Mario Kart game on a console that doesn't even have another game featuring the character was perplexing, to say the least. Doubly so when you realize that this is her only playable appearance in Mario history. Like, not just Mario Kart, ever, even including the mobile games. She's only appeared in a small handful of games in general, so it's just kind of an odd decision, all things considered. Plus, and this might just be weird osmosis, but I feel like Honey Queen was never that popular. Like, I remember a lot of gaming press in 2007 really ragging on her when Mario Galaxy 1 came out. She was an iconic part of the game, but not a popular one. And I forgot the most important part, Waluigi isn't even playable in this game. So when tasked with choosing between a popular series regular character and a generally disliked character that had only appeared in 2 games before this, Nintendo just kind of went, yeah. All in all, Honey Queen's inclusion in Mario Kart 7 is probably one of the most confusing on this list, since for the life of me, I can't think of a reason why she was chosen. Apparently, Waluigi was excluded for time constraints, but it's like, couldn't you have just cut into the bee time a little bit? Unless they really wanted a character to go along with Honeybee Hive, which, considering how much that map pops up online, would make sense. I'll tell you guys, the early Switch generation was a great time to be a Piranha Plant. Not only did a generic Piranha Plant shatter expectations and make it into Smash Ultimate as a fully playable DLC character, but Mario Tennis Aces also featured PD Piranha as a playable character as well. But not content with a single Piranha Plant on the court, Mario Tennis Aces had one more surprise in store for the Plant Gang in the form of a post-launch DLC character. But this wasn't just any Piranha Plant. This was a fire Piranha Plant. Full disclosure, I haven't played Mario Tennis Aces, so there may be some sort of in-game reason why this specific decision was made, but I just think it's so funny that Nintendo chose to specifically add a fire Piranha Plant to Mario Tennis Tennis aces. Like, the regular one was too busy in Smash, so they grabbed his arsonist cousin. For real though, this is an interesting case of an alternate version of a traditional Mario enemy being added over the original version. It'd be like a Paragoomba being playable in a game over a regular Goomba. And besides moveset potential, I really can't think of a reason why Fire Plant would have been chosen specifically over a regular one. Before this, I would have told you that all Piranha Plants could breathe fire. And apparently, what's also funny is that Fire Piranha Plant is a retcon name, as they used to be known as Venus Fire Traps. Didn't realize there was this much Piranha Plant lore. Regardless, the inclusion of a Piranha Plant isn't too crazy in and of itself, especially after Smash, but the fact that it's specifically a Fire Plant in Mario Tennis Aces and that regular plants aren't playable gets them in this video. Moving on to another Mario Tennis game, do you guys remember what I said earlier about Nintendo randomly pushing new NPCs from mainline Mario games as playable characters and spin-offs? Some of those experiments were very successful, like in the aforementioned cases of Rosalina and Pauline, but others were the Spritzy Princess. Mario Tennis Ultra Smash is already one of the most reviled games in the entire Mario series, with its extreme safety and lack of innovations, basically making it the poster child for what made Wii U era Nintendo so uninteresting. But I bet most of you forgot that the Spritzy Princess from 3D World was playable in this game. Yeah, you remember the Sprixies, those little fairies that appeared in Mario 3D World as end-of-level objectives to be saved? Well, similarly to Honey Queen, after a very short tenure as an NPC, Nintendo saw it fit to promote the Spritzy Princesses to fully playable status in Mario Tennis, or at least one of them. You can only play as a green one, which is kind of like handing a kid a box of crayons and telling them they can only color with one. Anyways, the Spritzy Princess stands out as probably the single most interesting thing about Mario Tennis Ultra Smash, since her relative obscurity and uniqueness amongst the rest of the game cast at least makes you go, wait, who, when you see her. And just like Honey Queen, she would drop off the face of the Mushroom Kingdom after her playable debut, only appearing after this as a Spirit in Smash Ultimate to this day. While I do think it's kind of funny, it's also very telling of where Nintendo's head was at this time, that they were in a position where they were so strapped for new ideas and things to include in Ultra Smash that they reached towards the damsel in distress MacGuffin from 3D World as a potential playable character, and only gave us one of them. Kind of funny, but also kind of sad. At least they bounce back with the next Mario Tennis game. Can we talk about how lame Mario Kart 8's character roster is? It's been said online before, but it really is a shame that Mario Kart's biggest roster in its history is mostly comprised of derivative filler and reiterations on the same ideas. This is a problem across the whole roster, but nowhere else does it get as egregious as Pink Gold Peach. Apparently created out of a desire for a female heavyweight in the game's roster, despite Rosalina already filling that role, Pink Gold Peach is pretty much the worst part of Nintendo's character rosters personified. She's a derivative reskin of an already existing character, being put in the position of a pristine unlockable reward in the original Mario Kart 8. I don't think anyone really popped off when they unlocked Pink Gold Peach. I think it was more like a huh kind of thing. And the worst part is that she wasn't even a one and done. She reappeared in Mario Kart Tour and even in Mario Sport Superstars, which really tells you all that you need to know about those two games creatively. While I'm not in a position to get mad at a character in a near 10-year-old children's racing game, it's worth mentioning how much Pink Gold Peach personifies the problems with Mario Kart 8's roster and the overly cautious safety Nintendo takes in picking characters in their games. Just go ahead and ignore every other entry on this list. And to top this video off is the thumbnail character, because I'm a good YouTuber. I know you saw that thumbnail and said one of two things. Either who's this pink-haired Rosalina looking waifu, or I can't believe someone remembers this. Yes, we're talking about the Final Fantasy characters in Mario Hoops 3-on-3. Mario Hoops 3-on-3 is a decently obscure Mario basketball game for the DS of all things that was developed by Square Enix. Apparently it started development as an original IP, but Nintendo signed off on converting it into a Mario game. As is, it's a perfectly serviceable handheld Mario basketball game, but its real identity lies in the Square original characters that were included as guests. Square actually went out of their way to design several original interpretations of classic Final Fantasy enemies and classes for this game, and their designs are really slick. We've got Ninja and Black Mage for heroes, Moogle and Cactuar for enemies, and the one you're most likely familiar with through internet osmosis, the White Mage. Not only are these designs stellar, but they also cause Mario Hoops 3-on-3 to be the first time Mario had ever crossed over with Final Fantasy in a video game capacity years before Cloud made it into Smash. And the best part is that this wasn't the only use of these designs. Square would go on to also develop Mario Sports Mix, another Mario sports game featuring their own characters, this time on the Wii. This allowed these already great designs to be adapted into 3D, which really helps demonstrate how much work went into getting these designs working in the Mario art style. Also, this game would add the Slime from Dragon Quest, who funnily enough also has a long history of crossing over with Mario. Part of me wonders if it's at all possible to recreate these designs in FF14. Either way, this is a fascinating footnote in Mario history and a real example of how wild the DS Wii era was. That this game was able to come out a Mario and Final Fantasy basketball crossover and was quickly forgotten. If Square announced a sports crossover between Mario and Final Fantasy today, people would go crazy. It's kind of a shame that these character designs got lost to the annals of gaming history, because I'd really love to see these versions of these characters appear again. All of that said though, it shouldn't be forgotten how weird of a concept a Mario and Final Fantasy sports crossover was. And that's the video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, I'd really appreciate a like or a comment or a sub, but if you'd rather not, I totally understand. Let me know if there's any characters you think I should have included, or ask why I didn't talk about the mountains of generic human children that have appeared in Mario sports games. Regardless, thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day before, during, and after watching. Thanks and cheers.